I'm just kind of making stuff up here. This might be terrible for you.
I like this, man. I like this. I'm just making up stuff here and this might be terrible for you. Don't do it. I like this. Grüezi miteinander, Gregory von Lebe Stark here. Ramsey Dewey is a very cool dude and he says a lot of good things in this video. I'm not a martial arts expert. The only thing that I'm going to look at is the way he talks about and he shows and demonstrates the kettlebell exercises. Let's jump right into it.
And the great thing about bears is, especially the grizzly bear, they make it a habit of hunting salmon, fishing for salmon every year, and salmon is an excellent source of, is it omega-6, omega-3, omega-8? I'm blanking on the number, but it's an important fatty acid that humans need too.
Yes.
So great reminder about nutrition from our friends, the bears.
The bears. I like this. I like his vibe. He's so chill. That's why I like Ramsey, and he doesn't care because he's blanking on the numbers. It's omega-3, but he doesn't care because he's right. So it's just, he doesn't focus on small stuff. It's the big picture, and that's what this video is also. It's about the big picture of training with kettlebells.
Kettlebells. It's essentially a cannonball with a handle. They come in lots of different weights. I would recommend get yourself a couple, maybe a lighter one, and then a heavier one.
And weight recommendation is something that I've changed a little bit. I'm still saying the same. 8 kilo for women who are starting out and 12 kilo for men who are starting out. And once you start integrating hardstyle swings, then you can go heavier. Because if you understand the hardstyle swing, then you have so much force to work with that guys can easily go with 20, 24, 28s and women easily with 12, 16 and 20. But still you have to understand the basics first. So that's why I say 8 for women, 12 for men, and then get yourself a heavier one if you dig into the hardstyle.
Probably the most basic fundamental exercise. The swing, the double-handed swing. Hold it with 2 hands. Arms straight, squat a little bit. Thrust the hips forward. If you want, you can lock out the arms all the way up if the kettlebell is light enough. And if not, just make sure that everything is nice and straight. Essentially, it's a dynamic deadlift, is what it is. So.
And he's right, it's a dynamic deadlift, especially when you do a hinge swing where you focus on the hips a little more. There's also a squat swing variant. Then there's the hardstyle variant, and now kettlebell sport, they don't swing. So what we do is we make a mixture of the kettlebell sport and the hardstyle. So what he does is with the lockout position over the top of your head, this is something that's always debatable when you talk to physiotherapists because it's a little tricky positioning for the shoulder. And the jump that he does with the feet is probably not necessary. And the way he starts, you should always make sure that the kettlebell's in front of you. You form a triangle. We call it the hinge ready face or the triangle that we got from Luca. And then you have enough space to your kettlebell and you can start with your first swing so you don't have to waste it and hold it in your hands like this.
An actual deadlift, it's on the floor. Keep a nice straight back. Lift it up. There we go. Pretty simple.
Yep.
The swing, we add a dynamic pump from the hips right there, thrusting the hips in.
See that little jump?
So without the kettlebell,
it's not as necessary, the jump that he does. You always want to make sure that you have your feet planted on the floor. What we sometimes do is, especially when you come up from the sports side and when you work with the snatch especially, and you can also use that tactic when you do the swing, is you start vibing a little bit on your heels and your toes. That's something that's possible, but I always recommend it to really understand the patterns and be safe with the exercise first before you go into a little bit of an advanced lifting technique.
Essentially that. So
Yeah,
what is that
right.
motion? How
It's
does that
hinge.
translate to combat sports? Ever thrown a punch? That same dynamic explosion that we use for all types of movements in fighting.
My man, Ramsey, brother, please always make sure, and you guys as well, if you do anything else that the kettlebell is not a part of, make sure the kettlebell is way out in front of you or to the side or behind you, just that you have enough space to work with it, because it's so easy to trip on these things. And just to reiterate the fact, I really like Ramsey. He has so many good things in this video, and maybe, yes, we can talk about the form a little bit, but hey, I'm a beginner in jiu-jitsu. I've never done jiu-jitsu. I've never done martial arts, even though I'm highly interested. So I'm totally beginner in that case as well. What he says with the punching power that comes from the hips, this is something that I believe why the kettlebell swing, especially the hard style swing with heavier weights, and even the sports style method that we do, we call it the Stark style. It can be very, very useful in punching because you need a lot of force from the glutes and the hams when you rotate your body and work from your hips.
Now, you can do it with 2 hands. I would recommend that to start, but also 1 hand. Unilateral training. And we can do the other hand. Check that out. And we can switch sides. Just let go and grab it in the air. Look, 1 hand.
Maybe the kettlebell's a bit high. You could stop on chest level. And what he also does is he not only hinges, but he bends the knees a little bit. That's more like, I would say, a squat swing variation. So if you want to focus on the hinge variation, which is the most popular and the most useful for your glutes and your hams, then you want to make sure that you don't work with your knees as much, that they stay extended, almost extended the whole time, and don't bend them. Just unlock the knees when you go into the backswing, for example.
Pretty spiffy. That's going to lead us into the next move, the snatch, where we pull it up and overhead, up and over.
So always make sure when you go into the snatch, if you do the sport snatch, this is such a highly complex movement, which probably most people don't need, even though it's fun to learn. But I think swing and clean and jerk, and then you're safe when we talk about the sport. And now he does more of a hard style move where you flip the kettlebell over your wrist. Now always make sure once it's locked, biceps close to your ear, and you stop for a second, right? For the stabilizer movement, and then you go down. What I see Ramsey do is he's a little bit loose. This is something that we could say maybe use a little bit more tension to finish the lift and to stay in the final position for a second to really feel the tension and then work it again.
Essentially, I'm pulling my elbow back with that swing-like motion from the hips that we learned on the double-handed swing, and then
acceleration pull,
punch
then
my body up straight.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Up. So all in one fluid motion.
And as you can see, he also jumps again. Something that you can see is maybe a jerk motion, okay, where you bring the kettlebell in the overhead top fixation in the snatch, and then you jerk it to catch it. That's one thing, but you don't need to jump. Keep your feet planted on the floor. That's probably something that he just habitually learned, and now he keeps doing it.
We can snatch that thing up and switch sides with a single-handed
And again,
swing.
as you can see, he bends his knees a little bit more. If you would really work in the hinge, your knees would stay as extended as possible, maybe unlock a little, because the snatch is just the next or the final level of a swing. We always say you start with the swing, then level 2 would be a clean, and level 3, the final level, would be a snatch. But it all starts with the swing. So your swing has to be perfect, so to speak, before you go into a clean or a snatch.
There we go. We can work snatches on both sides of the body. Now, when we hold that, let me
and always something, when you see, that's what I see in the video when he switches it, or he just wants to explain something and then he just grabs it or stops it. I'd always recommend, no matter how heavy the weight is, if you want to show something, you either rack it safely or you put it down safely and then you show something else. But because it may happen if you're demoing, then it's like you do something like you did in the snatch and then, oh, let me hold up, I'm going to show you, blah, blah, blah. And then something may happen, something may twist or strain, or it just goes so quickly and so fast, especially if you're not warmed up, even with lighter weights. So always be careful when you use it. And another thing in a snatch, always make sure the overhead top fixation is biceps close to your ear, arm fully extended. You have it double chin, don't go too hard, but you have to really that lock out while you pack your shoulder and have a lot of strength and power and integrity in the shoulder joint.
Down a bit. Kneeling snatch. When we hold it, I'm catching it with...
It's a kneeling clean, Ramsey. And that's, you know, why I wouldn't do this, because what you have to do on the knees, you have to swing it by your side. And what that teaches you is that you will always use your arms to swing. Or you teach your brain, hey, keep using your arms for the swing. When it comes to swinging or cleaning or snatching, you don't want to use your arms, the power of your arms, or just as little as possible. Most comes from your hips. So don't confuse the two. That's why the two. What you could do is just a kneeling press. That would be fine.
An open hand right here. Okay.
And you know, catching it like this, we always say kettlebell close to the heart, elbow rests on your hip. If you do the rest, you use the rest position. And you always want to make sure that you have a nice hand insertion, because if you grab it like this, your forearms will burn. And if you catch it up there outside of your shoulder, this may be a tricky position for your shoulder. Always make sure that you use your internal rotators, grabbing or cleaning the kettlebell where everything's nice and safe in that middle position, so you don't have to worry about your shoulder, because it's one of the most mobile and yet one of the least stable joints that we have.
Another movement, the clean, where I pull it from the floor to my shoulder. From the floor.
And that's essentially a power
shoulder.
Clean. When you look at the Olympic lifts, because this is where kettlebell comes from, a power clean is where you pull the bar up, if I'm not mistaken, and you don't go into a squat. You just catch it with all your muscle and your strength. And when you do a normal clean, is boom, you bring it up and you go down to a squat to catch the weight, right? If I understand it right. And then the kettlebells, we can say power clean is when you don't go back into a swing, okay? You just use your muscles or force the power, and then you bring it up.
Or we can switch hands, floor.
That way, always make sure that the kettlebell's racked internally, right? We always say follow that medial line, so the kettlebell travels in that medial line. And this way, like he does it, it travels in the lateral line. So make sure it stays in the medial line where the kettlebell's racked nice and safe.
Oh, and a push press.
Yes.
Add the legs in there. Add some extra explosion. Whew.
So yes, you
So
can
when
do
we get
this.
to
Yep. He does sort of a mini squat.
I squat a little bit.
Yep. And we call it actually a dip. And the way we do it, because we use the sport method in the ballistics, is you rack the kettlebell on the iliac crest of your hip, and then you have a lot of strength and power in your legs, and then they work like a spring mechanism. Your elbow, because it's connected to the iliac crest of your hip, you can transfer the energy from your legs into your arm, and then use the power from your legs to really transport the kettlebell in the overhead side fixation. Then we use a dip, because if we would do a squat like he does it, then you would lose that arm-body connection, and therefore the energy transfer from your legs would not be possible. It wouldn't work, and your arms would do like 80% or maybe 50% of the work.
And also add some dynamic power and explosion from the hips and the lower body, which is something we're always doing in fighting. This next one.
And that's why kettlebells are so incredibly applicable to martial arts. We see a lot of martial arts guys do or work with kettlebells, and I'm thinking about doing another video where I'm exclusively showing you exercises that I believe like he does for martial arts guys, the way I understand it.
The Turkish get up.
Yep.
We lie down, we lift it up, and we stand ourselves back up, and then we go back down.
So he does.
And now we do it on the other side.
And switching weights over your head. This is something that we kettlebell coaches, we go mad. We're like, do this. Put it down and then rotate around your head, or maybe you switch it to a tactical get up or a tactical switch, because we're so highly focused on shoulder strength, and you don't want to hurt your shoulder. And because kettlebells work a lot of the shoulder, you have to be very careful. Now, his Turkish get up, he does the basics, right? Yes, it looks a little bit iffy, okay, so to speak. So a few of the phases he doesn't do, and he's just essentially getting up, which is okay. And even when he goes down, maybe something in the back, that lower back that Luca showed us, which is highly important. And these are just specialties that you really want to look out for, and really want to make sure that the Turkish get up is safe, because like Luca said, if you do a nice Turkish get up, it should look very aesthetic and pleasing to the eye.
So what kind of programming should you do with kettlebells?
Now I like what he says. Check this out.
Well, pick a program and stick to it. That's my advice.
That's what's up.
Consistency will get you farther than the best of intentions, than the most scientifically accurate program of all.
100%.
If you're consistent, if you just get up every other day and you consistently do a bunch of swings until you feel tired. Okay?
Just work
It's not
with
the most
it, man.
scientific
Yeah.
workout program, is it?
And that sometimes I've read this in a case study, which I think is so interesting. People who are kinesthetically gifted move more, and maybe they have a little bit or some problems with cognitive matters. And people who are cognitive gifted are sometimes kinesthetically weaker. So cognitive people have the tendency to overthink it. Yeah, I need the scientific perfect program to do this and that. And yes, there are some programs who are complete waste of time. Yet, we always say if you're moving, that's one of the good things. And somebody just said, well, in a recent comment, he said, maybe the problem with me is sometimes that I'm too narrow-minded and I've opened up a little bit, yet I still try to be as assertive and as empathetic as possible at the same time, which is a hard thing to do. And I believe I stand on the grounds that there's the best way, that there's two best ways to train with kettlebells, either hardstyle or sport. And yes, you can do all kinds of things with kettlebells, yet then you would opt in for a suboptimal workload, or you would use the kettlebell in its least efficient way. And I'd rather listen to people who understand that thing and who have dug deep into it and now have come up with the greatest exercises and the biggest differentiating factors and the biggest aspect that bring you the most bang for your buck, so you don't waste time doing the exercise, right? That's the idea. But we can start at the bottom level and say at least you're moving, right?
What if I did that consistently?
Then you're good, man.
I would get consistently stronger.
Yep.
As opposed to doing nothing.
What up?
If I paid $50 for a really well thought out program, and there are lots of them out there, and I didn't follow it, that gets me nowhere.
Yep.
That does nothing.
There's a lot of wisdom in there, man. And that funny exercise, they call it a ski swing, which I think is not a lot of, which doesn't serve a lot of value because it enforces your brain to tell your arms to use the weight, because you have to use your arms to move the weight. And that's something that's always tricky when you want to really override that instinct of using the arms when you work with kettlebell, because you want to focus on your hips.
I'm just kind of making stuff up here. This might be terrible for you.
I like this, man. I like this. I'm just making up stuff here, and this might be terrible for you. Don't do it. I like this. I like this dude so much, man.
It's been a while since I picked up kettlebells.
Such a great dude, man. He's just trying stuff out. Having fun with it. Now, the final exercise that he shows is an exercise that we recently did in our life workout. We call it the farmer's life, because you do a farmer's walk, suitcase, then you do a farmer's walk in the clean position, so a clean walk, and then you do a farmer's walk in the overhead top fixation that we call the waiter's walk. Check this out.
Just carry him like
and
this.
you could say he's a little bit in a hunch position and in a kyphotic position, but that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
If that's too easy, if they're too light,
Yep.
clean them up to your shoulders, carry them around
When I watched the reaction, I was like, oh, that's the exercise that we're doing right now. Great.
like this. If they're still too light,
Yeah, put
it's
them
still
up.
too easy.
Put them up.
Press them up overhead.
Boom, and then walk.
And do farmer carries
Yeah,
overhead.
the waiter's walk.
Work your stability.
Yes.
Even with relatively light weights, you can get a great workout.
100%. So thank you for watching, guys. If you liked the video, like it, consider subscribing if you want to see more kettlebell content. And if you're looking for a program that builds you up from a beginner to an advanced lifter in about 3 months, and you want to combine it with some easy to follow nutrition coaching because you want to lose weight and get in shape, and all with the kettlebell, then consider buying a course, 90 Days of Kettlebells. You'll find the link in the description, 14-day free trial included.